audiobook narrator Mike Scott. When selecting your next audiobook, choose from some of the great titles narrated by audiobook narrator Mike Scott, like Bloody Autumn, the Shenandoah Valley Campaign of 1864. And if you're an author or publisher interested in having your written works produced as audiobooks, give Mike a shout at MikeScottVoice.com. Mike Scott, the voice of history. And Civil War Trails. It's the world's largest open-air museum, and they offer over 1,300 sites across 6 states. Drive the Gettysburg campaign turn by turn, paddle to Frederick Douglass's birthplace, or hike to remote earthworks and artillery positions. Visit civilwartrails.org to request a brochure and explore their interactive map. Follow Civil War Trails and create some history of your own.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It's season 4 of Addressing Gettysburg, and what better way to start off season 4 than to kick it off with a guest who's been requested by listeners for 2 years now. A guest who, in my opinion, created the internet history star, and a guest who has more energy than I've ever had on my most energetic day. He's an author, he's an LBG, he's the chief historian of the American Battlefield Trust, and perhaps most impressively, he's friends with Tim Smith still. I'm speaking none other than the great Garry Adelman. Welcome, Garry, to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm psyched.
And welcome back to all of you listeners. Thank you very much for just everything. We had a great month of June and July, fantastic numbers, and it's all because of you. So thank you very much for that. I'm not going to waste your time with anything show related, except to tell you that there's a new show that we're doing on Facebook Live and soon YouTube, and it covers everything going on with Gettysburg today. In town and all that other stuff, and also what is going on with Addressing Gettysburg as a show. We're going to not bother you from now on. We're not going to bother you with non-history stuff on the Ask A Guides. It's all going to be on the Facebook show. And let me tell you something. We've been doing tests on it, and it is well received so far. So check that out. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you have your notification turned on. And also, if you use the Apple Podcast app, please leave a 5-star review. Reviews, liking, sharing, subscribing are the best ways to help us grow our audience. Okay. So as always, what we do when we have a guide on for the first time is we ask him or her about themselves. So Garry, no one's ever heard of you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself so maybe someone might have an idea who you are.
Sounds good. And I would say that I'm often misunderstood, so maybe we'll clear some of that up. But
Great.
I'm a Chicagoan. I became obsessed with the Civil War because of William A. Frazanito's work when I was 16. D history student at the time. Long story short, got more and more obsessed until 1988 when I took my first trip to Gettysburg. Oh, man. I'll never forget that. Happily, I'm a journal keeper, so I still have all my thoughts down from that first trip, which is...
I'd like to see that.
Oh, yeah, and I've posted a little bit of it on Facebook. I actually have the writing when I was saying somewhere in Devil's Den, which was, by the way, totally wooded in 1988.
Yeah.
And I said somewhere in Devil's Den, and while I'm writing, I looked up, and I was like, oh my God, I just saw the dead sharpshooter position. My mouth's dry. I can't breathe. Like it was, and I was writing all this down, and I did it before I looked up again. So it was.
I'm so really glad cool. You said that and not a ghost.
Little did I know what a part of my life that would become. But, moved to Gettysburg without a job in 92. Where I had already been studying to be a guide before that, took the guide test in 94, opened a restaurant in Gettysburg because that's my past life.
Yeah, so somebody mentioned that to me the other day. What was the name of the restaurant?
It was called the Food for Thought Cafe and Coffee House.
And where was it?
And it was a kitty corner from the courthouse, a block south of the square where I think there's a winery right now.
I used to live on the 3rd floor of that building.
And get this, check it out, the Minter Building. I met a guy who was born in our restaurant when he was much younger, of course.
Really?
Yeah, considerably younger.
Considerably the youngest he's ever been.
But Tim Smith and Dave Richards, two LBGs, who were both LBGs long before I was, built the platform that is still sitting in the window of that restaurant.
Really?
The little 7-inch or 6-inch platform. Yeah. They built that, and I have pictures to prove it. In any case, sorry.
No, so you and Tim didn't become guides at the same time?
No, Tim, when I came, and let me just say this, I should be reluctant to admit this, but I thought I knew Gettysburg. This is on my early trips, and I first met Tim in late 89 or early 90. I could check my journals for that because, man, he was just the most country dude I'd ever met. I'm from Chicago, and I come and meet this guy. And, oh my God, I didn't know country people till I started living.
Right.
And In any case,
Cool.
there it goes. I thought I knew Gettysburg, and then all of a sudden, him and another dude. Before Tim was a guide. Tim didn't become a guide, I think, till '92.
Okay.
I didn't till early '95, and these guys started doing quiz on the colonel of the regiment, and I knew there was 500 plus regiments, and I felt like an infant immediately just being around him and Jim Klaus and Dave Richards, Charlie Fennell,
Jim
Wayne
Klaus,
Moss.
I remember him.
You know, these are the first people I met in Gettysburg. I got really lucky.
That's a good group. Yeah.
Good and Tim and I, for whatever reason, just immediately hit it off, and I've been giving that dude a hard time for 30 years plus now. I mean, and it has never stopped.
Don't stop.
No.
Don't you ever stop. So you do the restaurant thing, and you said you become a guide in '95, right?
Yes. So while I still had the restaurant in its last year, I became a battlefield guide. I was already on the board of the Gettysburg Battlefield Preservation Association at the time. It was like me and Frazanito and Tim and Mark Nesbitt, and it was a very different. It was a very interesting group, all authors. And then the college bought my restaurant because they wanted to open this thing called a Starbucks operation, and I was the only espresso machine around because it was a coffee house. And I was a trained barista, so the college bought my restaurant, and I ran all of their food service operations outside of the cafeteria, the grab and go, the snack bar, the concessions, and the Starbucks. Yeah. And I did that for 4 years, kept guiding, started writing, wrote the Devil's Den book with Tim, and then worked for Thomas Publications, and that was my exit from restaurants, 1999. Did that for 3 or 4 years, during which I went back to graduate school, Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania.
Nice.
And then worked for 8 years after that at History Associates in Rockville. Great job. I mean, I got to do great history stuff, but during that time, I started doing work for the then Civil War Preservation Trust, giving tours, doing research, writing things for the magazine, meeting donors out on battlefields, things like that. And eventually I was doing so much work for the trust, and ultimately they created my then position, Director of History and Education, for me in 2010, and here we are.
That must be nice to have someone create a position for you.
It was nice. It was a good crossroads. The trust was 99% land and 1% education, and they knew that wasn't tenable in the long term. So I happened to say, hey, I'm ready to work there if you are, at the right time. And man, that meant the sesquicentennial. It means the transfer to the Civil War Trust, then the American Battlefield Trust, and interesting into. And I can't believe where I find myself. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's timing is everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I always thought, now I notice this when I see especially younger guys out there starting their Instagram or Facebook or YouTube history channels, and I can tell that they grew up watching you.
That's interesting. I haven't. A lot of people tell me that.
Yes.
But I've not seen somebody else that said, "Oh, they're probably doing that." That's interesting.
You know what? Your hand gestures. they do all of the hand gestures that you do. Nobody talks like that naturally except for you. And so they're mimicking the hand gestures.
It's really interesting. I get that, and 90% of people like all that is what I am, right? They might not know the whole thing, but my public persona. Yeah. And by the way, which is exactly who I am. A lot of people think I'm somehow different in person. No. That's totally me.
No, yeah.
But there's a good 1-2%, that just can't stand the gesticulations. And I wonder if those people go up to people who stutter and say, "Could you stop that?" It's really annoying. I mean, people actually are on YouTube, with internet bravery, telling you, "Stop waving your arms, stop." They want me to be who I'm not. I can't. I've never known what to do with the thing.
You should do a video with your hands tied behind your back one time, and then just wave your shoulders.
I'm afraid of what people would do when my arms were tied behind it.
That would really throw people off.
I give a lot of people a hard time.
It would. So, but I always looked at it as you were like the first guy, at least that I was aware of around here, that in the Gettysburg world, I mean, that kind of figured out how to use social media for history. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but to my recollection of coming across my radar, you were the first one that I noticed, and then after that, but nobody seems to really be able to have come close to you. And I don't know really if I have a question there. I just want to tip my hat to you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that, first of all. And secondly, I mean, I come from a family of storytellers. So I'm a storyteller, and I do, when I started social media, and by the way, at first it was just one page. What a disaster that is. You don't want to open your personal life, to everybody else.
Yeah.
It gets into trouble with work. So I started my Civil War page in 2011. It just celebrated its 10 years recently.
Congratulations.
And I mean, thank you. I mean, it was years to get to 1,000 likes, though, or followers. It was really, really a slog, but I paid attention to what people say. I eventually realized that they liked the single photo. They liked the first-person shooter videos. Mm-hmm. They liked details of historic photos. And then, all of a sudden, it took off, I guess, to some extent. And I've always been aware of brand, even before I knew what it was.
Yeah.
Like, who are you and who are you trying to be,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I guess I'm different than a lot of other people. It's the energy thing and the enthusiasm thing. I don't know where it comes from. I'm just obsessed with this and a few other things, 4 other things, I think.
It's hard to do, though, is it not?
Yes. I have
It's a
trouble
lot of
keeping
thought.
up with it. Yeah, well,
that's required.
First of all, there's some planning. I mean, I don't use scripts or anything like that, but there is... the Facebook stuff takes incredibly less time to do than people think.
Yeah.
Because my full-time job and my part-time jobs are all Civil War and history things. So I come across a lot and catalog things away on my phone, and I store things up, and it makes it seem like I'm never home, which is also, not true. But I don't like people knowing when I'm exactly out of town.
Yeah.
I have a family and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I just paid attention to what people liked and ignored the haters, and there are lots. And I run the most positive page, I think, on Facebook, especially for a military subject, because I just love banning people. And I don't know why people complain about social media. They're in complete control of who they interact with and what they watch. And yet it's like, social media is ruining my life. I don't get that. I'm in complete control of what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't, social media-wise, there's a lot of people I like personally, but I don't want to be friends with them on Facebook or anything. It's an interesting world.
No, it is nice to ban. In fact, I just started banning people from our page.
Yeah, no unfollow, no block.
No,
maybe
ban.
except for family. Family, sometimes you have to just unfollow their stuff.
Or mute them.
Other than that, ban them.
Yeah.
That's it. Unfriend them. It's a great feel.
Because it's like you're not doing it to have the great debate. It's just like, look, this is what I'm putting out there. This is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, like... It's the same old argument with radio and TV in the old days. It was like, instead of complaining and trying to get a show banned, turn the channel. Find something else that you like. Someone likes whatever that is, but people can't do that.
On every video series the Trust does, and this is, we go to another state, we're doing a battle anniversary, we get people complaining about the way we do things. I mean, this is free. Don't watch. I mean, it's that simple. And the number by far, the two number things, we have a windscreen on the camera 100% of the time. And did you ever see those little things that fit over your camera? I mean, my God. I mean, the wind they hear is with the windscreen on. And 2, then it's... Shouldn't you be wearing gloves, when we're handling artifacts and things? And I always have a good sarcasm, like when you have your own museum, you can handle your collection however they're getting on the people who own the artifacts.
Yeah.
And wannabe archivists drive me nuts. There's other things too.
And I could talk about those naysayer types that just pick apart every little thing. I could talk about that for days, but we don't want to get into that anyway. Yeah. All right. So Gary, we're here then to talk about Little Round Top. We're doing an Ask A Gettysburg guide. And usually what we do is we have the guide, do a little bit of a background on what we're talking about. So tell us the story of Little Round Top and the Battle of Gettysburg. How did it become so important? All that jazz. And then we're going to take our break, and then we're going to get to our questions. That's how we go on these shows. Go ahead.
All right, good. I shoot a lot of this in 120 seconds, this in 180 seconds. So let me try to do it briefly.
This is going to be the shortest background we've ever had.
I don't know. The Little Round Top sits at the end of what is often called the Union fishhook, one which never really took shape as a fishhook anyway. And the Confederates, the far Confederate right, Hood's division, 4 brigades, 17 regiments will launch a massive attack toward famous places, Little Round Top, Devil's Den, the Wheatfield, namely. And 5 of those Confederate regiments will end up attacking Little Round Top proper. As people argue about some of the other regiments and whatnot, they're going to end up attacking with about 5 regiments on Little Round Top. Of course, it had been cleared of its timber a couple of years before the battle by a young, enterprising farmer. Frazanito quote there, by the way. And, the Union scrambles reinforcements. Famously, General Warren first sees that the hill is unoccupied. Why? Because Dan Sickles decided to move his corps, his 10,000 men, off to I actually got that pronunciation of Sickles from from Tim.
From Tim, I know.
I got a lot of good things I get from Tim over the years. He steals some of mine, but doesn't credit me. You heard that, Tim? Tim and I have this ongoing thing. It truly doesn't bother me, but he's often talking about, we only wrote two books together, and he'll call it my book. And once in a while hit me with a co-authored with Garry. So it truly doesn't bother me, but I give him a hard time about it, and then he thinks I'm serious. So
really?
This isn't being recorded, is it?
No.
Okay, good.
We're warming up.
In any case, Sickles moved out, left Little Round Top unoccupied, didn't have enough men to man the whole line, and Warren, one of the heroes of Little Round Top, will certainly work through his efforts and General Meade's to eventually get a brigade, then another brigade, and then a couple of divisions into the vicinity, plus more on the way. Of course, there will be a fierce and famous fight going on there, which was really equal numbers, about 1,850 Confederates, 1,850 Union soldiers, depending on how you count them. That's what I say about. And their right and left flanks happened to meet at the same place. So these are two of the largest armies in the world, and they struggle back and forth in this famous fight. Ultimately, of course, the Union will hold after being pressed severely, especially in two locations where the Texans are really pushing back or moving around the 16th Michigan, and where the 15th Alabama are really pushing and trying to move around the 20th Maine, the critical point, I call it. But the Union will ultimately hold, chase the Confederates away, advance up Big Round Top, and really secure the Union left, meaning, there's a new left flank. It was probably the 8th left flank that day, and it's probably one of, 40 or so left flanks during the Battle of Gettysburg. I think Little Round Top, the 20th Maine, Vincent Spur, was the left flank of the Union Army for less than an hour.
Right, okay. And originally it was the 16th Maine, right?
16th Michigan?
Michigan. I did it again, Mike. I kept saying this beforehand. There is solid evidence that the 16th Michigan actually was first on Vincent Spur. Were they on the left of the 20th Maine? Were they where the 20th Maine is? And I think it was of such short duration that it really doesn't matter. Do you know why they were moved?
Well, I suspect it's because, first of all, from the perspective, for the listeners, of course, this fight is overlapping with Devil's Den.
Right.
Devil's Den
There's
is
a
first.
Fight going on down below.
And we have great chronological things that connect the two. And I'll always encourage everybody when trying to study battles, forget the times. There's no synchronized time at the time. But if the people at Devil's Den say, and the battery on Little Round Top opened up, bam, you know these things. So I look for those between the wheat field and Devil's Den and the Peach Orchard and Seminary Ridge and Little Round Top to try to understand the sequence of events.
Sure.
They are overlapping, and the commander of the then Union left flank at the time, Elijah Walker, 4th Maine, just figured when the Union came and occupied Little Round Top that they would connect. He figured that this was going to be an extension of his line rather than just occupying the South Slope with a single brigade of 1,300 soldiers. That's Vincent's brigade. And I think what probably, and I've heard Fonts speculate this in Gettysburg the second day, and other people say, he may have realized, well, hey, our right flank can't be where the castle is now. I mean, that's just not enough coverage. We need to cover more of the hill in case they come and slip between us and the 4th Maine or the Union forces down that way. So he moves the 16th Michigan over. And did this have anything to do with the Butterfield twins? The 83rd PA and the 44th New York fought together sometimes, and this does appear. It's in New York at Gettysburg. It's in other places. And supposedly James Rice sort of affected the order. He's commander of the 44th, soon to be commander of the brigade. And so in a way you have these two regiments in the middle, and then you have these less tested. Well, in one case, the 16th Michigan, the smallest regiment on Little Round Top on the right, and the untested sort of 20th Maine on the left.
The barely tested.
Barely tested.
So Vincent's brigade is up there fighting for a while. There's several assaults that the Confederates make against them, right?
Yes, I mean, and when I give tours, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So it really depends what you count as an assault. But by every account, and remember the woods, fronting the 16th Michigan and the 44th New York are just much further back. 70 yards, 140 yards further back. Fresnillo demonstrates this in early photography at Gettysburg. So remember, those attacks, at least in the case of the 4th and 5th Texas, are coming a lot further, across an opening than Warren Avenue, the road.
You're talking the woods on Big Round Top. Or
the woods on the south side of Warren Avenue. So if you're looking out from the 16th Michigan, those woods were much further back. I love what the park has done with tree clearing and what they've done for Hood's Advance and Devil's Den. Great job.
Yeah.
They never quite really did it right. Over on Warren Avenue. And I remember there was a plan, but I think that part of the plan is not going to be implemented. But the Texans and Alabamians doing that sort of main attack on the open part of the hill, 3, 4, 5 times. I don't think it's 6. I don't think it's less than 3. They clearly advance and retreat several times. And then in sort of a separate fight, the 47th and 15th Alabama are going to be launching their own series 3, 4, 5 times. I try to say things, people realize this, as generalities. I don't mention a lot of first names. I say a guy named Warren or something on tours and stuff because, and I tend to not point to a rock and say, this was the place, unless I know it.
Yes.
This is what historians should do. We should be careful in what we say because, man, especially in the internet age, it really propagates quickly.
Well, and I think people, it doesn't matter. There's certain people that the very specific details matter to, but most people, especially just the general public, if you want to get them interested in history, you got to say a guy named Warren.
Yeah, boom. I mean, I think on a battlefield tour, when I was at least being trained, mention no more than 5 names on a whole tour.
In the whole tour?
On the whole tour.
Wow.
And you can do it. I mean, if you've got 2 hours to give that is a challenging oral test.
Yeah.
It really is. And getting bogged down with names, it's good advice to not mention too many because each person, then that's another person, A, they might ask questions about, and B, that you have to tell them something. You can't just say the name,
Right.
So brevity is key. And I think it's always, and I say this about the Gettysburg movie, I say it about historical novels, I say it about Ken Burns for any mistakes they have. It's always easier to undo the historical mess than to create the spark in the first place. I'd rather have a fake spark and then undo the mess later.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the details that people like me talk about just isn't going to get people interested in the first place.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, just get that movie into the people's eyes.
Yes.
And then let them come here and find out that it wouldn't be so easy if Hood just went around to the right.
Yeah, and watch Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter if that's what does it for you. I love that movie. I mean, a lot of people take themselves way too serious.
Yes, they do. I agree. Okay, so you mentioned the movie. So like the movie, Joshua Chamberlain saves the day. And it's all over, right? No, just Vincent's brigade single-handedly with the help mainly of Chamberlain.
Old Pennsylvania maybe helped Chamberlain a little bit, but
but everybody else was sleeping. Correct or incorrect?
Of course, incorrect. And I think one of the viewers wrote in to ask, what really drives you crazy about it? And although the things that drive me most crazy while I'm on the battlefield have to do with the way I eat rather than with anything historically related, a separate story that maybe we'll get into. But what I would say is, obviously it's what I've come to call the myth of Little Round Top, more than anything that drives me nuts. And that is that Chamberlain he might be great. He did something very important. Is he extraordinary? Okay, yeah, but there's a lot of other extraordinary people up there. So, I mean, it's this
He's an extraordinary writer.
Yes, and he lived. I mean, he's extraordinary at staying alive, and and tough guy, right? Wounded a lot. This has been an interesting thing because because I think Little Round Top isn't the most important thing in the world, or as I always said, as I said in the book, more important for the Union to retain than for the Confederates to capture. People think I'm a Chamberlain hater. I just try to place him and other people in a realistic light. That's all. So, of course, it wasn't just that. There were numerous, 10 other regiments on Little Round Top. You could call it 18 if you'd like. There are plenty of people fighting on Little Round Top, but let's just look for a second. The one next to him is commanded by a captain, Orpheus Woodward, who's out of the Army in less than a year. So you're not going to hear much from him. One regiment over, James C. Rice, dead within a year. One regiment over, Norvell Welch, dead within a year. One regiment over, Paddy O'Rourke, dead there at Gettysburg. Brigade commander, dead. General Warren, sort of disgraced for a lot of his life, and he didn't live all that long either. So,
it helps to live.
Winners, it helps to win, to live, and if you can write, all the better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Chamberlain deserves a lot of credit, but it's one of numerous left flanks, and, it is one that he and his men held very admirably, and that I think, the Confederates really tried hard to take. It's a fascinating fight.
But and you're not trying to take away from what they did or didn't do. It's just that a lot of us have our first idea of what happened on Little Round Top was the movie, and so it's hard to shatter that image that's burned into our brains and talk about the full picture. And when you do that, some people can't see that for what it is, and then they just, you're criticizing their worldview or something like that, and they can't handle it, and so I think that's why people get also upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, there is this thing. I mean, the movie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think that the little round top scenes take up more space in the movie than the entire first day's infantry fight, which, as if there's even infantry there on the first day in the movie, and the rest of the second day combined. So, I mean, it is based on a novel. It's a great novel, but it's a novel that is focused on 6 or 7 people, and Chamberlain's one of them. He's a great character. But I wanted to go back to, one of my favorite Gettysburg quotes actually involves Chamberlain, because he's not just a good writer, but he's a diplomat. Somebody went up to him, another Maine regiment, I think it was 19th Maine, and he said, General Chamberlain, this is after the war, I hear that you claimed the 20th Maine did the heaviest of and most important fighting at Gettysburg, something to that effect. And I always thought it was the 19th, and Chamberlain, the diplomat, says, but isn't it all the slats in the fence that keep the pigs out of the garden? and so when he's talking to his comrades and colleagues, it's, we were all in this. But when he wrote, I mean, like a lot of people, not just him, he did change what he wrote over the years, and a lot of us do.
So you mentioned the 140th New York. Was that like an extra regiment in Vincent's brigade that was just late to the party, or what? What was the deal with them?
I think is that your way of saying I didn't set this up effectively with brigades? So just real quick, Vincent's brigade is part of the 1st Division of the 5th Corps, and they are going to be the one brigade that shows up on the south slope of the hill, and those are the main, New York, Pennsylvania, and Michigan soldiers we've talked about. Now, after Warren ended up helping to get them there, kind of through Meade, through General Sykes of the 5th Corps, and then out eventually to General Barnes, to his orderly, to Vincent, and then they come to the hill. Warren said he didn't see Vincent come up. So Warren goes riding down the north slope of Little Round Top, and what do you know? Comes upon a unit he knows, a brigade he used to command, and he knows Paddy O'Rourke. And for the second time in his quotes, when O'Rourke says, well, I'm expected ahead, I'm supposed to report up ahead. He says, never mind that. I'll take responsibility. Right. He's also supposedly, attributes that quote to Hazlitt or to Augustus P. Martin for having it. Never mind that. I'll take those guns up there. I think that was a big thing back then. Disregard orders.
Never mind
that. So Warren personally leads the 140th New York up the hill, while the rest of the brigade that had already passed kind of comes back. The rest of the brigade, 91st Pennsylvania, 146th New York, 155th Pennsylvania. And just by way of note, both the 140th and the 155th, were interdicted or driven through and with by Hazlitt's battery, as they're coming up. Let's just not even get into that. So that's another good thing of timing. If we know when Hazlitt opened up and compared to Devil's Den, I also like the idea of how they, interacted temporally with, Weed's brigade, and that's the brigade that comes up. That comes up.
Yeah. Now let's go back a bit, because you mentioned Warren and him, getting the help up to Little Round Top. Explain to everybody exactly how that would work, sending that message to get it to the right people, and how should it go, and how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, so I almost said as much as I remember about it already. So he sends a message to Meade. Meade has already, and this is a key part of it, is that the 6th Corps has been cited now. And the 6th Corps is going to become the Union Army's General Reserve, which frees up the previous reserve, the 5th Corps. So Meade had already sent General Sykes, commander of the 5th Corps, to move over to the left and hold it at all hazards.
Prior to Warren?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the meantime, Warren gets to Meade, Meade writes to Sykes, and Sykes writes to Barnes, General Barnes, commanding the 1st Division of the 5th Corps, to send someone over to Yonder Hill. Warren wanted a division, but a brigade's going to have to do for now. The orderly, I can't remember if that's Captain Lieutenant J. I can't remember, a guy named Williams. I can't remember which, but there's a great chapter in Fonz all about the 3rd Corps staff. It's and of course this is the 5th Corps we're talking about now, but he treats all this really well, and I can't commit it all to memory.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And for those who don't know, again, Harry Fonz, Gettysburg the second day, still the standard treatment. I know you guys talk about it out here. So that orderly is looking for General Barnes, to tell Barnes to send somebody, and Vincent, flags him down. Are we talking about Vincent or Weed at this point? Were you wanting me to
Vincent,
okay. Yeah. So Vincent, and this, I've always pictured this sort of between the, God, Tim's going to kill me, John T. Weichert House, I think it is, because there's like 70 Weicherts named John.
Is John down there?
Alone, yes, so it's John just north of the Valley of Death.
Right.
I've always pictured them south, near the Wheatfield Road between the house and there, which, is interesting to me because that's really nasty, boggy ground there.
Yes.
But I've always imagined them there closer to the road.
Vincent's Brigade.
Okay. And here comes Barnes's orderly, and Vincent sort of flags him down and said, "What are your orders?" He said, "I am, going to General Barnes. What are your orders?" And he makes the dude. And for what it's worth, Strong Vincent apparently was that guy, like Winfield Scott Hancock, that could show up on a battlefield in civilian clothes and people would listen to him. So maybe an orderly headed for a higher ranking colonel than him, than Vincent would, respond to this. And he did. And Vincent found out that he was supposed to take a brigade. He was ultimately going to send a brigade to Yonder Hill. And he was close to it.
So, okay. So Vincent does intercept him.
Yes.
Intercepts Warren's, or who's Barnes's orderly?
No. This is Sykes's orderly.
Sykes's orderly looking for Barnes.
Yes.
And reads the order. And since the order is to send a brigade up there, he says, "Okay, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Go find Barnes and tell him I've done it," essentially, right?
Yes, and then he goes ahead, Vincent, leaving the brigade under the command of James C. Rice, second ranking guy in the brigade, and starts to reconnoiter. And he decides they're going to lead them up the east slope, so they won't be seen. And that's apparently why Warren didn't see Vincent's brigade. It's understandable that he might not see them on the east side of the hill, picking their way across maybe an old logging road that you hear about sometimes.
Sure.
We don't know a whole lot about that, but they probably used that part of the way and arrived on the spur. That's also interesting why the 16th Michigan might have been placed on the spur first, because they're on the spur before they're on the shelf. They're coming up on the east side. And in the meantime, Vincent is sort of reconnoitering and deciding where his area is going to be. And he sees trees in front of him on Vincent's spur, where over on the open shelf, he has a better view. So right away, he felt, I think he could be surprised if he didn't guard this spur about 50 or 60 feet lower than the crest of Little Round Top.
Now, in the Leno book, Eric and I were looking at this earlier. He has in one of the maps, he has 4 different possible routes that they all took, that Barnes's division took. And most of them, I think all of them actually, it has them all up by the George Weichert farm. Is it George? Now you got me confused.
It depends. George is the one over on United States Avenue near Hancock.
George Weichert. Yes, George. Up there. Basically, it looks like they're coming in on that horse path that's there today. And then Vincent, so the other two go more towards the peach orchard. Yeah. And then Vincent kind of shaves off and comes down, like you're saying, like basically along Sedgwick, but in the boggy marsh area, it looks like on the map. But the rest of the Fifth Corps is further away. So where did they start off from? Because we were wondering that earlier.
Yeah, where
did Barnes start off from?
Yeah, so these guys. So first of all, let me just say that, and I was careful to say it this way because us guys, we form impressions, right, of what it was like back then. And my impression is, I think is what I said, is that he's south of the John T. Weichert farm. Part of that might be informed not only by some of the articles and books I've read over the time, but that the Fifth Corps is coming in on, I believe, what we largely know as either Granite Schoolhouse Lane or on the Blacksmith Shop Road. So if they're coming in that way and heading out, I mean, you don't really have a good eastern or westward access from Granite Schoolhouse Lane. It seems like you would go down the Tawnytown Road if we don't know. And that's why, I mean, the Wheatfield Road is the east-west access at that point. And if you've got all sorts of stuff with you, if there's artillery moving and everything, I've always seen them moving more on the Wheatfield Road.
Right, me too.
So I think that probably informs my impression. But what you do see in Brady's July 15th-ish photo from Little Round Top looking north, you see wagon tracks north of the Wheatfield Road crisscrossing the fields over there, which is interesting. It could imply that people are going from the Wheatfield Road north, and it could also imply that people are going from, near what is now U.S. Avenue. Most things called avenues were not there during the Civil War. Right. People cutting south from there if they went straight across the Tawnytown Road. But I mean, there were some woods there. This could be a difficult prospect. So I can't say I've resolved.
And there could have been paths that, like cow paths and stuff that
Absolutely.
aren't there now and we don't know about, that weren't written on maps and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
they could have gone through it. Wheatfield Road itself, though, did it go all the way to the Tawnytown Road?
Yes.
At that point, it did. Okay.
Yeah, and then
because sometimes I see it on a map and they stop it before it gets to the slope.
I've never heard I've never noticed or heard that, but it could be.
I think I just saw it in this. Well, it's not important. We'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Okay. So, now weeds up there. I'm sorry, we took a tangent there, but weeds up there now. Okay, so go on with weed then. What happens with them?
So weed, so the 5th Corps is the General Reserve, as I mentioned, and they are on both sides of the Baltimore Pike over near Rock Creek, and which is interesting because then the 6th Corps shows up after their even longer, considerably longer march, and they are, jumping into Rock Creek. They're getting leeches on them. Charlie Fennell tells a story about that, and they are weary after this exceedingly long march. That when they're in sight, the 5th Corps deploys. And there's not a whole lot of mystery about this because, Barnes is the first division to move. Mm-hmm. You've also got, remember, Augustus P. Martin's artillery moving around the same time as well, probably behind Barnes and in front of, the 2nd Division under Ayres. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, the 2nd Division under Ayres. I think they just are basically going in line, and cutting across the fields like a lot of us do to get from one side of the fishhook to the other. By the time, it's really only Barnes's division we have to wonder about because the other units went straight into battle as soon as they arrived. We know where, Burbank and Day, that's Ayres' division, where they lined up and where they moved into the wheat field. And we know where Crawford, roughly was, or at least his main 1st Brigade, or 3rd Brigade is actually going to be. So, there's not a whole lot of mystery with it. People like talking about it, but here comes the 5th Corps. And with Barnes's division first, the last brigade in line, Tilton, then Schweitzer, and then Vincent is my memory. I'm sorry, I'm messing this up because we're supposed to be talking about weed now. Remember, before we were saying it, I sometimes I have trouble keeping up with myself. So you have Day, Burbank, and Weed is the first of that group to arrive. Mm-hmm. And most of Weed's brigade had already passed what we now know as Sykes Avenue, the one that goes over Little Round Top. And Warren happens to ride down there. He's already seen Hazlitt coming up, and he sees that they're on the way. And as far as he's concerned, nobody else is there. I find this all hard to believe because it seems like Vincent should have been there by that time. But Warren said that he didn't know anybody was over there, so he rides down for reinforcements of his own. You could see that if he's hanging out near where his statue is, you don't have a great view of what's going on the other side of the hill yet. Right. So he rides down, and that's when he comes across the tail end of Weed's brigade, and that's the 140th New York, and he leads them up. And again, in the time that it took them just to go up there, the 16th Michigan has begun to have trouble on Little Round Top. The fight had to have been going on for a while, so it's really hard to resolve the actual timing of all these things.
Right, but not too long, but not too quickly after Vincent's fight is underway.
Yeah, people forget that this interview, might be about as long as the attack and defense of Little Round Top. And at least as of right now, nobody's shooting at us or anything like that. And we can come back here tomorrow and not only see, this is where I was, and then we can listen to the recording. These guys often came back 10, 20, 30, 40 years later for the first time. The battlefield had changed. There's monuments. The trees are in different spots. And we expect them to remember.
Yes.
And it's a very interesting thing to try to piece these things together. All things equal, the earlier the account, the better.
Using your analogy of listening to the recording there, you'll find also that when you listen to a recording, especially after doing a show like this where it's all off the top of your head, you'll go, I said that? Like, you forget things. You forget entire parts of a conversation. And so I would imagine that these guys had to fill in the blanks a lot when they were telling the story to people that wanted to hear it. And they're like, well, I don't really remember what happened here, but I'll just make something up.
Absolutely. I can't stress that enough. Just even as somebody who talks a lot, both at home and abroad, much to the detriment of my family, on video and whatnot, and at work. I increasingly, as I've gotten older and busier, find myself saying, that sounds like exactly what I would have said, instead of that's what I said. Right. Because I don't remember a lot of these things. People assume that and I used to assume this with Frazanito, don't you remember every line of your book? No. He's written several books, and nor do I remember every line of mine.
That's why he wrote it in a book, so he didn't have to remember.
And people often, they'll write to me, remember that video you did? Not referencing what video it is, where you said that thing about the Texans.
The one I watched.
Yeah. No, it's I run into that a lot. Somebody wrote to me the other day about, are you going to be going to X place on the tour? I'm like, what tour? I'm in 12 states giving tours everywhere. I don't even know what you mean.
It's true. And we get that too, where people will quote a line and then say LOL. And I'll be like, what's this? And they're like, what do you mean? You said it in this episode. I'm like, I don't remember that.
I get that.
Yeah. The only line I think that most people remember is,
cool.
That one.
Well, you guys have created, that. And let me reveal a secret here, because although I have one in the car, I'm not wearing one now. One day, as I've gotten bald around the top, I just I need a different hat. I've got to stop. Yeah, I'm in good company in this room, if I may. I've got to stop just wearing baseball caps. I'm going to get a Civil War hat. And eventually I got a Civil War hat, and then I started wearing it on a video. And, 3, 4, 5 videos in, nobody was saying anything. So I
didn't like
fabricated. No, nobody said anything at all. So I simply said, I looked at my phone as if I was looking at comments. I didn't say that I was looking at comments, and I looked back and said, by the way, I like my hat. And from that minute forward, the hat became a thing.
Yes.
Right? Or the hats. Now I have 3 of them, because now I have a tricorn. Because Trust does more Rev War stuff.
I saw that.
So the cool thing, I've been hearing Tim say that forever, and I never really thought about it till you guys made it a thing.
Yeah, because I've always heard him say it, but I never thought about it until Eric pointed out that Tim only says it when Eric says something idiotic. And then I go, that's his way of saying you're an idiot, but he doesn't want to be me.
I heard it on one of your Q&As. It was, somebody says something ridiculous, he says, cool, and walks away, right? I've seen him do that forever, and Tim can work a room, man. He is also often misunderstood.
I agree. I think people just don't get him. He's a very dry sense of humor.
He does. And sometimes he's misunderstood by himself as well.
All right. So Weed's Brigade, the fighting continues. How does it end? Does it end with the Confederates finally taking Little Round Top and winning the war?
Yes. No. Okay. So, of course, the attack and defense of Little Round Top mostly consists of 5 Confederate regiments against 5 Union regiments supported by a battery, right?
Right.
But there are a lot of other regiments involved. So, the 140th New York, under their first in his class at West Point, Patty O'Rourke, commander, who will breathe his last during this movement down the hill to stem the attack of, the Texans coming up and working their way around the end of the partly falling back 16th Michigan. The Confederates really have lost steam by that point. So on that side of the line, the battle has calmed down, and then the Union goes and shows up with Pennsylvania and a New York regiment as well, soon to have, seemingly endless reinforcements show up on the other side. That is, around when the fight on the other side of the line is really coming to a head. And that's when, of course, the Alabamians try to get around the end of the line of the 20th Maine. The 20th Maine spots it and they double out their line, extend it, and refuse the flank. There's a couple of more 2, 3 intense attacks in that direction. And the Union will just barely hold long enough to, of course, famously launch the 20th Maine, their own bayonet charge. And the Confederates had finally had enough. They felt like they were surrounded by 2 or 3 regiments. They fall back up Big Round Top, as Oates said, and apparently by his order, he said, like a herd of wild cattle. The Union, especially the 20th Maine, 83rd PA, chase them up Big Round Top, hold that. Eventually, you've also have Pennsylvania Reserve showing up there, and then the Union line extends to the Taneytown Road and then beyond it. So, you have a really secure Union left flank after this initial attack at, I don't like to use times, but about 6 p.m. is when it climaxed probably, on Little Round Top. So the Union has really secured this hill, but there's still 22 hours of skirmishing going on between the Confederates, who successfully captured Devil's Den, who at least captured part of the wheat field and had access to the woods, around the wheat field. And there's going to be lively skirmishing. We can call it sharpshooting if we want. The Union has sharpshooters on Little Round Top at that point, and it is lively fire. And, 2, 3 of Hazlitt's battery casualties are going to come on July 3rd, with the sniping going on from Houck's Ridge across the way, 300, 400, 500 yards, depending on where you are and where you're shooting, but, a doable shot.
You mentioned Oates ordering the retreat just about the time that the 20th Maine charges down. What is tell us about the charge of the 20th Maine and compare it to the movie and how neat and perfect it was, to give us more of a realistic picture of it.
Yeah, and after this, at some point, I would like to talk about the attack that never happened on the west slope of Little Round Top after the Confederates captured the wheat field and things like that. Sure. I would love to close it up with that.
Okay, yeah.
But, the 20th Maine, there's a lot about the movie it gets right.
Yeah.
The Maine men are stretched. They do stretch out their line to twice its length to refuse the left. The Confederates are moving around on that side. And there's one of the best OR moments. Maybe I'll save it for later. But maybe ask me later. Or it might be part of a viewer question about one of my favorite things to point out on Little Round Top. It has to do with, Oates' report, actually, official report written on August 8th.
Just tell us now, because we'll forget.
Okay, good. Well, so the Confederates are going to extend their line, and Oates specifically wrote by August 8th, that where his right flank used to be, there was a large rock, and that he could use that rock as a pivot to pivot around that rock by moving to the right, and then swing to the left, wheel to the left, taking advantage of a line of rocks perpendicular to the one we had just abandoned. And man, when you go to Little Round Top below Vincent Spur, east of it, there is one big rock right where it should be, and there is the only line of boulders that there are right there. And that's when the historian likes it, because when you can confirm what they say on the ground, and guess what? The Confederates said that it forced the Union, Oates said, forced the Union to change direction almost immediately. And yes, they did. We know they did. The Union report suggests that they refused their left. So, that's a beautiful moment. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are just interested in Gettysburg haven't taken that step, to take what they read and look for those places out on the battlefield. Discoveries abound.
Yeah.
That maybe you didn't know about, or maybe nobody knows about still.
And you get chills when you discover them.
When you're the one who knows, even if you don't know that anybody else does, but as far as you know, nobody else does, and you made that discovery yourself.
But even if everybody else does know it, but you found it by piecing it together from what they wrote, like your own little treasure quest or whatever, that there's something to that. Like, you didn't just go and ask somebody, can you show me where this is? You found it. That's exciting.
Just look at he doesn't like the term Fresnidiots, the people who walk around with Fresnito's books. He likes Fresmaniacs better, because he doesn't like that they're stupid.
Right.
But Fresnidiots sounds better. But these are the people like I used to when I was a tourist, walking around with his book, trying to line up the pictures. He's already found them. He can do a map and a modern photo. But those are the people still doing it, because, and I can tell you as a visitor, that was personally satisfying for me to find the places that he'd already found. It was a sense of discovery. And as the chief historian at the Trust, I can't tell you how many times in a month I tell people, in especially Facebook messages, where it's easier to Google something than to ask me the question.
Right.
It happens all the time. In fact, half the time, the answer was in my caption for the photo they're asking about. It drives me nuts. But in any case, I say that, these things are best, explored on one's own. Read Glenn Tucker, High Tide at Gettysburg. Read Lee and Longstreet at Gettysburg. I tell that to people all the time, because there is a sense of discovery. And I'm just going to keep the mic here while I continue the fight for Little Round Top. So Oates does pivot on that boulder, does launch attacks sort of east to west against Chamberlain. He's got a thin line. His line, by his own admission, buckles back so that the two sides are almost touching each other, like first a horseshoe and then maybe like
a hairpin.
A hairpin, yeah. I think that might be how Fonts puts it, or something like that, or maybe even Chamberlain himself, yeah. Because I was thinking hairpin too. I was thinking bobby pin, but I'm not even sure if I know what that is.
I
think that's that little one straight and one curvy thing.
Yes.
Okay, good. I had long hair once, but I never wore those.
Never used bobby pins.
Yeah, I don't know why I would have. I don't even know why I brought it up. In any case, so they launch attack after attack, and just as they're out of steam, whether or not Oates is getting ready to order a retreat, whether he did order a retreat, I don't know, but Chamberlain does make the decision. He doesn't, in the movie, have a period of complete quiet where there's no battle going on anywhere else. And they're going to gather all 10 company commanders together, and they're going to talk about doors and hinges and everything like that, But the movie gets it right. He yells for the bayonet, apparently. The men fix bayonets, which I think some of the Confederates and the Union soldiers mentioned the click of the bayonet there, and, move forward. First the left, and then when it came even with the right, chase those rebels all the way to Richmond. And famously, Company B of the 20th Maine, that had been their skirmish company. And let me just say that this is nothing special in the movie. Let's put out a company of skirmishers in front of our regiment. I mean, the 16th Michigan put out 2 companies. The 44th New York put out a company. The 83rd Pennsylvania put out a company. So it's nothing special. What's interesting about the 20th Maine, though, is that their company not only was on the left of the Union Army at the time, but also didn't come back to the main line. So they rose up from behind the stone wall, along with some sharpshooters that had gathered with them, 2nd U.S. sharpshooters. And they are going to pour lead into the Confederates, which is why they thought they were surrounded by 2 or 3 regiments. The Union chases them, as I've said, up Big Round Top. And a lot of the Southerners were probably happy to be captured at that time. That seems crazy, but, when...
They would get some water, at least.
Rest and water. That's what they wanted. And your physiological needs, all of us, bathroom, warmth, food, water, always take over. And you're not thinking about rotting away in a northern prison. You're thinking, I need to rest right now. So
now you're talking about Company B and the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters over there behind the wall popping up. I'm going through the Leno book earlier to like brush up on this stuff, and he has some troops of the 16th Michigan over there too. Have you heard that before? Is that a mistake?
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've never heard it before either.
In his defense, or Steve Stanley's defense, who makes the trust maps, any map maker's defense, first of all, there's no such thing for some actions as enough of a breakdown, minute by minute, because you're always going to make assumptions. And two, just like guides, historians, writers, the map makers are forming an impression of something, and we don't have perfect information on those things, and we make guesses on what people did. I try to say when I'm guessing and when I'm not, but on a map, putting it in print, it's really hard to show movement. People often ask me about the 83rd Pennsylvania. Why are they up there and the other units are higher up? Well, battles are fluid. People are moving up, down, back and forth. So I find that any mapping project, I'm very forgiving on maps because they're trying to do the same thing that we're doing. As historians, and I make maps too. It's hard.
Yeah, I'm pretty forgiving on anybody that does anything creative or artistic because it's not easy to do.
Agreed.
And okay. So did I interrupt you, or did you go to where you wanted to go?
I think I was done, but I was going to take it to the west face of Little Round Top.
Go ahead.
Okay, because I think people only think about the fight of Vincent's brigade plus a little bit of Weed's brigade. So those 5 regiments. But of course, the Confederates capture Devil's Den. Some of those troops go and help the additional brigades of Hood's division in the wheat field. The Confederates roll over the wheat field. They've got a fresh brigade in Wofford kind of coming through along the wheat field road. And at about 7 p.m., as the fight for East Cemetery Hill is about to launch and everything like that, maybe 7:30, you've all of a sudden got Kershaw, Semmes, and Wofford's brigade, maybe Anderson in there, and they all of a sudden are on Houck's Ridge, and they are coming across Houck's Ridge and the Valley of Death to attack Little Round Top from there. But my favorite quote, I can't remember who said it, but that it looked like a wave like breaking on a beach, going a little forward, then a little back. Like there was nothing left of these guys after so much fighting.
Yeah.
Longstreet famously said, despite not succeeding in a lot of ways, the best 3 hours fighting ever done by any troops on any battlefield. And so these guys first start to push against the 6th Corps that is arriving on the field. The 6th Corps, the 98th PA, is intermingled with the Pennsylvania Reserves as they start charging down, against this final Confederate force. Sort of, you've got the 6th Corps Brigade of Nevins, the rest of their brigade, kind of on the other side of the reserves. The Confederates, are actually about to capture Walcott's Massachusetts Battery, the 3rd Mass Battery C, I believe it is. And they do, maybe for a time, at least the Union abandons their guns. But man, here again they see reinforcements where the Union needed them in seemingly endless numbers. They might have seen Ayer's division or 2 brigades come up over that hill, and now here's the Pennsylvania Reserves. That's a story of Gettysburg. Wherever the Confederates have some success, the Union, because of a shorter line, interior line, and Meade's use of the troops, wherever they broke through, the Confederates, the Union had reinforcements there. And where are the Confederate reinforcements?
They're non-existent.
Non-existent.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Little Round Top's fighting there on day 2. Anything on day 3?
Of course, yeah, and it's brief, happily.
Okay.
And one of my favorite places to go on Little Round Top is actually the Rocky Pen. People don't talk about the Rocky Pen enough, and I'll probably miss some of the generals, but there's sharpshooting and skirmishing going on all day on the 3rd between the two. Of course, Pickett's charge then happens. And that is going to overshadow all else on the 3rd. But there's significant action on the 3rd day down on the south end. Not only South Cavalry Field, but of course around Devil's Den and Little Round Top. So after Pickett's charge, during Pickett's charge, Charles Hazlitt, Weed, they're dead. Warren's been wounded in the neck, and he seems to be, not doing so well. It was the best day of his life, military career at least. Pretty interesting. Yeah. Do people always know when that's happening? This is it. Yeah. This is my zenith right here. Did Lee know that arguably at Chancellorsville on May 3rd? Did he know it? Interesting stuff. In any case, you've got Benjamin Rittenhouse, lieutenant, in charge of Hazlitt's battery. This is West Point battery, Griffin's battery, then Hazlitt. Now you got Rittenhouse. He has a great shot, at the Confederates coming across in Pickett's charge. The Confederates noticed it, tried to silence it, and it was devastating fire, at least when the Confederates were in their first half mile. Then it got tougher to shoot directly to the north. Of course, there's some lively fire going on there, but Pickett's charge is repulsed. Sorry to spoil the end. And then after the repulse, there's General Meade, there's Sedgwick, Sykes, Pleasanton, and Crawford, and maybe one more in this rocky pen right behind the monument of what is now the monument of the 146th in New York. And they're discussing how to get the rebels out of those woods. There are still Confederates, Georgians, in and around the wheat field. Most of Benning's Georgia Brigade and the rest of Hood's division had fallen back by this point, but they didn't get the order, the 15th. So they talk about Crawford clearing those woods out. And Crawford does. He moves McCandless and Fisher's brigades, I think, both forward, helps to recapture, I think, some of Bigelow's guns as well, and pushes the Confederates out. And actually, Benning's 15th Georgia, the ones that had been hung out, lose 100 casualties, mostly captured, on July 3rd, more than they'd lost on the 2nd. And so there's additional fighting going on there.
But no major...
Nothing major going on. No. And then, of course, you've got other people pushing forward as well.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, so what we're going to do is take a quick break now to hear from our sponsors, and then we will come back with your questions. Stick around, and we'll see you in a second. The season is finally here. 2021 is going to be a great year, and we know that you're going to come down to Gettysburg. And when you do come down to Gettysburg, you got to take a tour with Getty's Bike Tours. Getty's Bike Tours has been in business since 2005. It is the best way to see the battlefield. Why? Because you don't just see the battlefield, you experience the battlefield. Our tours are led by some of the finest licensed battlefield guides out there, and they make sure that you walk away with a full understanding of what happened here on those 3 days in 1863. Here's the best part. Because you're an Addressing Gettysburg listener, you're going to get 15% off when you make your reservation. Now, this discount only applies to tours, so go to gettysbike.com or call 717-752-7752 and book a tour today. There's no better way to see the town you're visiting than to eat your way through it. And there's no better way to eat your way through this town than with Savor Gettysburg food tours. Enjoy a culinary and cultural experience through historic downtown Gettysburg, one delicious bite at a time. Their season runs from April through November with the special Christmas Tastes and Traditions walking food tour during the month of December. So go to SavorGettysburgFoodTours.com and enter promo code AG2021 to receive $5 off your tour. Eat, walk, get a taste of history with Savor Gettysburg. Have you noticed our revamped website at addressinggettysburg.com? Well, that's the fine work of a man named Mike Stretch, and he also redid our logo for us. Both of them I originally designed, and both of them were originally horrible. But now they're nice, and that's all thanks to Mike. Mike has an awesome t-shirt company called Heritage Depot. There you'll find great designs based on Gettysburg and the Civil War with t-shirts and other types of merchandise. So go to heritage-depot.com and spruce up your Gettys Nerd wardrobe. That's heritage-depot.com. Our favorite bookstore in Gettysburg is For the Historian, located at 42 York Street. Isn't it, Eric?
You're darn tootin', Matt.
It's because they have the best selection of Civil War books in Gettysburg, both new and used, and online they have even more books to choose from.
But Matthew, what if the Civil War is simply not my thing?
Not a problem, my fine four-fendered friend. This is For the Historian, after all. They cover history from the ancient world to the 21st century with a strong selection of World War II and American Revolution books.
It's astounding how they squeeze thousands of titles from Osprey, Savas Beatty, UNC Press, and more into their store.
And it's also astounding how you and I both squeeze into our pants every day. Well, handsome, they have a warehouse too, and that's where they keep all those books that are available online at forthehistorian.com. And folks, if you go to forthehistorian.com now and order books until you're blue in the face, be sure you mention that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg in the Note to Seller box, and they will refund your shipping costs.
What if I prefer to browse in the store and don't want to go online to get my books?
Great question, Doodlebug. Just mention Addressing Gettysburg at checkout, and they'll take 20% off the retail price of your item. So go to forthehistorian.com, stop by 42 York Street, or call 717-685-5207. That's forthehistorian.com or 717-685-5207. Gettysburg, A Nation Divided mobile app is relaunching this summer. Gettysburg, A Nation Divided is an award-winning mixed reality mobile application using augmented reality technology. It transports users into the most crucial moments in the Battle of Gettysburg, the turning point of the Civil War. Users can listen and watch historic figures share their stories as lifelike animated avatars, traverse 360-degree image sequences of the battlefield. Its cinematic battle sequences are narrated by actor Scott Eastwood. The mobile app is available for free on iOS and Android. It's designed to be used anywhere, at home, at school, at the park, or at Gettysburg National Military Park. It uses GPS to help guide you through your journey to see the stories and events unfold at the exact location where they occurred. So go into your phone's app store and get it now for free. That's Gettysburg, A Nation Divided. Hey, are you planning on spending some time in Gettysburg soon? Well, you got to check out GettysburgBattlefieldTours.com as your source for things to do. Tickets are available for exclusive experiences such as the Sunset Double-Decker Battlefield Tour, Adams County Port Tour Shuttle, and Discoveries Beyond Gettysburg. For details, follow them on Facebook or visit GettysburgBattlefieldTours.com. That's GettysburgBattlefieldTours.com.
You're listening to the Addressing Gettysburg podcast with Matt Callery.
All right, and we're back, and let's get right into the questions from our patrons. Don't forget that in order to send these questions in, you've got to be a patron over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, and then you can ask any question you'd like. Doesn't mean we'll answer them, but you can ask them. Here we go from a new patron, Brian from Cleveland. He said, I watched a Matt Atkinson Ranger Walk video, and he pointed to a rock above the Union line as being the spot where John Oates was killed. I assumed he was killed in the saddle. Are multiple sources saying different spots?
Yes. So, I already said, I think, during this that it drives me nuts when people point out this happened right here unless we know. And I'm of the opinion, just like with, at Devil's Den, Ellis and Cromwell of the 124th New York, people guides others. It's on the list of 140 things guides need to know. Where was the rock where Ellis and Cromwell were laid out? We don't know which rock it is. So I feel the same way. What we do have for what's called the Oates boulder is a map. Oates drew it and said, here's where the rock is. But unfortunately, this was not a satellite image saying that this is exactly where it is. So it's kind of this hand-drawn map. And you can kind of infer where it might have been. And of course, it has to be something large enough to hold some sort of a monument, right? Yeah. So first of all, Tom Desjardins in Stand Firm, Ye Boys from Maine, sort of went out to say, yep, that's the Oates boulder in the background. And nothing against Tom or Matt. I have not seen anything that convinces me that we know where it was. Do we know roughly where, Oates would have been? Sure. I mean, it's not that big of a Confederate line. We have Oates's map, if we can believe it, 30 years later. So I think we can come generally close to where it was. We know it was far enough up the hill where Chamberlain was like, and it wasn't just his choice, by the way, but he contradicted himself a little bit in that situation. Chamberlain did, but we don't know is my answer.
But that rock, though, that we think of as Oates's rock, I mean, that's kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in that area, right? There's not too many in that particular area.
But remember, I thought it was just Desjardins that said the Oates boulder is in the background there, but now it's not there anymore. Remember, they did build a road there, Chamberlain Avenue. How many roads have been blasted? I just, it very well could be the one people have pointed to. And Ellis and Cromwell's rock could be that large flat rock right near the monument. Wouldn't that be convenient? But I don't know. So I'm not going to say. It's my opinion that we don't know where the Oates rock was.
And what about Vincent? Because there's the boulder by the castle, and then there's the marker down below. Yeah. Both saying that he fell there, but there's a good distance. I mean, maybe he was doing a split and he had really long legs, but I don't think so.
He was like a Superman.
Yeah, he really, and his first name was Strong. But where do you think?
This one's a lot clearer for me. But first of all, we have to acknowledge the possibility that it might be at neither of those places. Right. Right. Here's what I'll say. The monument, the sort of plinth, maybe down near the 83rd Pennsylvania, is one of the first two monuments tied, erected outside the National Cemetery on the Gettysburg battlefield, July 78, that and the Fred Taylor marker. So we should really pay attention to that location, that it's the first. But the other spot you're referencing further up the hill was carved there 13 or 14 years before that, maybe even a little bit more. We don't know who carved it. Exactly. But, in both cases where the carver made another inscription, too, further up the hill for Hazlitt, He seems to have gotten it right. By every account, Vincent, with his riding crop, is on a boulder or near one where he is trying to rally the 16th Michigan. That makes zero sense down at the lower location. I mean, for my money, the rock carver got it right in both circumstances, or at least closer. I don't know if that's the rock. How did he know? Who's this person that knew where Hazlitt and Vincent fell? Who did they talk to? Who is that?
Right.
That can be here during the Civil War, because it's carved by October 65 at the latest.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. All right. Bill Richardson, former governor of New Mexico.
Glad to have you on, sir.
Says, was Little Round Top truly the key to the Union defense? I have read that General Meade even referred to Little Round Top as the key.
Yeah, so it depends on which time. So I have a whole chapter in my myth book about that. I know the myth book is hard to get, but you can go to the old Gettysburg Daily videos where I think there's 6, 12 videos where I talk, maybe it's only 5, where I summarize my whole myth argument. And one of them is that, first of all, early on in 63, in the ORs in early 64, very few, I think, something like 5 of the 37 official reports that reference the hill. It's not called Little Round Top to most of them. And even Chamberlain's isn't supposedly written on July 4th, but he obviously wrote it much later and then replaced it with another one dated July 4th that says Little Round Top.
What was it called then?
Well, Granite Spur, sometimes early on Weeds Hill, but it had no name during the battle, like most things on the battlefield. Round Top did, according to some early maps. I mean, it's Adam Lynn's Hill or Round Top.
Wasn't Sugarloaf or something?
Sugarloaf is another one, too. Yeah.
Was that for big or
Rocky,
little?
Stony Point. Sugarloaf is always the little.
Little.
Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, you know the story. If Tim hasn't told it already, my favorite one about this stuff is that a woman named Lily Neary. Have you heard this? Has this been on the podcast already?
I don't know if it's been on the podcast, but go ahead.
Okay, so Lily Neary, writes into the Gettysburg Times or compiler, I can't remember which one, it says everybody's wrong about Little Round Top being named Little Round Top because of its proximity to the larger hill, Big Round Top. She says that Little Round Top is named for her great-grandfather, Peter Little, the same man after whom Little Round Top is named, or Littlestown, Pennsylvania is named. But, first of all, shred of truth in every myth. I mean, the Littles do have a claim on Ephraim Hanaway's land, so there's some truth to that.
Sure.
But, Tim has been for years scouring the records looking for the Big family, after which Big Round Top is named, of course.
But wouldn't it be Little's Round Top then? Because if it's Littlestown, come on.
I don't know. Tim's been trying to get me to say Willoughby's Run because it's Willoughby Winchester's Run. It was Willoughby's Run instead of Willoughby. Man, getting to naming things and getting it to stick is really tough. Ask John Batchelder, who thought it should be called Weeds Hill.
Yeah, well, I think Tim, though, through the good graces of this podcast, is convincing more and more people that Lower Culp's Hill should be the... just because Tim wants it, I refuse to jump onto that. He's never going to change it from... Because who in the world? He attacked Culp's Hill, East Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, and Spangler's Hill. We need another hill to talk about. It's already... Even Fox in his book, it's a long title because we have 2 different names. I still think Little Culp's Hill. Little Culp's Hill is all right.
I tried that, but I tried to put it in the Trust Gettysburg animated map, which is our second most viewed video. So I would have convinced 1.8 million people maybe, but...
you would have a bigger audience than Tim on that one.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. The ACHS Trust HHS social channels are really rocking lately.
Yeah, they are, but they're not 1.8 million.
No. That is true.
Yes.
What was I going to say? I don't remember. I totally sidetracked about Little Round Top.
No, we were talking about...
What was the viewer question there? I'm 54, by the way. The key. Yes, thank you.
This is the key.
Early on, very few people called it important, and only one person really went even further. It's the key to our whole position. But of the 37 that reference the hill, most don't ascribe, almost all, don't ascribe particular importance to it. But as the years go on, it becomes the key to our left. Oh my God, the Confederates can get behind the Union Army. They can threaten our trains. They can control the Taneytown Road. Oh my God, they're going to capture all of Hazlitt's guns and they're going to drive the Union Army away. They're going to find these reinforcements. They're going to come up Little Round Top and everything. No. So as this is blowing up, long before Michael Shera and Ken Burns or anything like that, there is a discussion between General Meade in the papers and Historicus or, the Committee of the Conduct of War, where he's being assailed for what he did. Part of that concerns the Fifth Corps and some of that concerns, Dan Sickles, right? Wouldn't it make sense for Meade to elevate the import of the height when he's embroiled in a scandal with the Third Corps? Sickles abandoned the key to our whole position. And I reinforced it. So Meade didn't say that at the beginning, but by 1865 or 1864, he is saying it that way. And other people came around. It was the mausoleum of our lost hopes if the Confederates captured it. And it just went on until eventually the loss of Little Round Top was equated with Union Army loss at Gettysburg and that the United States is a much different place today because Little Round Top falls. And this didn't happen for 60 years until people actually started saying that. And now it's a foregone conclusion. And even I said it in my first Little Round Top book, and it really bugs me, but I pointed that out in the myth book that people, myself included, have bought into this myth forever. So I think, and I said it already, Little Round Top is an important point. No, anybody standing up there knows it, but it's more important for the Union to retain. I don't know what the Confederates could have done with it, and I'll be glad to get into that on this or another question at any point. I don't think it's the key to the whole position. Culp's Hill is much more important. So is Cemetery Hill much more important. I'm not saying it was a good thing if the Union lost it, but I don't think any of the dire consequences, I'll say one more thing about it, would have come to pass. And the last thing I want to say is that I want to challenge anybody listening to find an instance in military history, the annals of military history, where historians and tourists have put so much confidence into troops who've never won, who didn't win this battle, as they put in the Confederates who might have captured Little Round Top. Because these superhuman people, maybe 1,400 or 1,200 of them left at this point, were going to man Hazlitt's cannons after capturing them with all the implements. They're going to get to the Taneytown Road. They're going to control and capture that. They're going to drive away the whole Union Army. They're going to repulse the 9,300 soldiers who Meade had already dispatched to the left to hold at all hazards. And somehow these are superhuman Confederates. I don't know of another instance where people have put so much confidence into people who didn't win.
Well, they're so superhuman, they lost the whole war.
Yeah, that's just because of superior numbers.
Okay, so
I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
We're all going to get in trouble.
Go ahead. I think there's more to it, though, people. It's not just numbers. Grant didn't just win that way.
You also have to be on the right side.
It helped. Hey, I'm right down the middle. Go ahead.
Of course. I'm so speaking. Mike Lentz said that to me. He sent me a text.
Dude, Mike is always causing trouble.
I know. He's the guy that all the things that I say that piss people off, he texts me and I just read them as they come over my phone.
Or let me just say that if I said anything wrong on this, I'm going to just
Mike Lentz.
Mike.
Yeah.
I'm sick of Mike's crap.
So am I. I'm sick of getting crap for Mike's crap.
Amen.
Hey, Mike, there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah. Okay, Serge Bielanco. He says, "Hi, Gary. Thanks for appearing on Addressing Gettysburg. It's damn exciting to finally hear you on the show. My question is this. Across the years after the battle, photos and accounts tell of at least a few group of Confederate veterans who returned to the battlefield to retrace their steps across the ground of Pickett's charge. But I'm really curious if you've ever encountered anything that indicates Confederate vets ever returned and retraced their July 2nd movements to or on Little Round Top." Good question,
that
Serge.
is good. And first of all, by the way, it's really a pleasure to be here. I enjoy the podcast.
Thank you.
So I'm glad to be here.
We're happy to have you. We have wanted to have you a while. Well, like I said during the break, I just thought you were a little too big for me, and I needed to build up first before I could ask you to come on.
It's pretty funny. I wish I could tell people one of the things that people think that make a lot of assumptions about me, but I am still, in my mind, I try to remember this at least, that just a short 30 years ago, I could not get people to listen to me talk about the Civil War. I mean, I'm talking about people hated the Civil War because of me, because here I was in Chicago bothering people that would come into the restaurant I was managing, and my family and friends, and oh God, you need a Civil War pal. It's one of the 150 things I think everybody needs to do. Don't go it alone. So I still try to keep that in mind, that people are thanking me for doing what I'm obsessed with. It's a really interesting thing.
It's odd.
Yeah. So as for, this, here's what we know. We know that a lot of Confederates came back. We also know the Confederates came back to Little Round Top. We have pictures of them on Little Round Top, not big groups, but I've seen Floridians at Devil's Den and on Little Round Top. We have pictures, post-war pictures of groups and things. We have John Batchelder meeting Confederates on the field. We have William C. Oates talking about where his right flank was in reference to the 1890s observatory on Big Round Top. So what I can say, Serge, is that we know that they came to the battlefield, and we know that in part that they are going to retrace some of their steps, because you don't go up Big Round Top by trolley. I mean, you're walking up. I doubt Oates walked up the steep southern face of Big Round Top, which I would say that if there's 5 people listening to this podcast who have ever done it, I'll be impressed, because that is rough.
Yeah.
Going up the path people think is rough. I mean, it is much taller and much longer than people think. do I have any sort of an account of any group of Confederates starting on Warfield Ridge and marching across to Devil's Den and Little Round Top, especially Little Round Top, in their actual path? I don't know that. I don't remember reading that. So I think they came, but they didn't do it the way, say, the Trust has done on these podcasts where you're falling down and, dealing with sticker bushes and everything. It's pretty nasty stuff. I don't know of anybody doing it, but I do know at the 1913 reunion, they're doing things like it.
Right. Okay. All right. John Reynolds, he has two questions. He says, of all the misconceptions that are out there about the Battle for Little Round Top, which one really grinds your gears the most and why?
I'm going to say, John, I think I answered that already accidentally, because it's definitely the whole myth of Little Round Top.
Yeah.
With a close second being, that has nothing to do with history. People panting up to me with 1/8 of my energy, asking me where I get my protein. That's the number one worst thing that happens to me on the battlefield.
Because you're a vegan.
Yeah, or plant-based, Whole Foods plant-based eater. Yeah,
what's the difference?
Well, vegans still eat processed food or can. They can still have, a lot of French fries and eat a lot of oil and things like
natural.
that. Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't have fries sometimes, especially when you travel and stuff. But yeah, sure. I try to be, I'm 98% where I just eat whole food, plant-based thing.
You're gonna have to, after we're finished here, you got to give me a little 1 week thing I should...
Yeah, just read How Not to Die by Michael Greger.
How Not to Die?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to live forever then?
No, but I am, since you brought it up, I do this not because, I'm an environmental guy and an animal rights guy, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I'm convinced I'll live longer. And no, I won't know if I'm right until, you're dead or I'm dead. Right. But I'm trying to live to 96 and a half so that I can be at Gettysburg 200. That is the date I've picked. Nobody in my family's ever lived that long, and I am going to try to be here for Gettysburg 200. That's how awesome Gettysburg 150 was for me. It was, I can't wait for it.
Wow.
I'm not looking forward to the end of my life, but that's a date I can fix. I don't know when my kids will get married or make me a grandfather. I don't know any of that. I know one date that I want to live for, and that's that.
That's awesome.
That's why
at least you have a goal.
Yeah, and lastly, I tried it for 3 weeks and felt immediately better, and I've felt better ever since. And people with 1/10 or 1/12 of my energy ask me how I do it. It's easy. I don't miss hardly any.
Were you this? Did you have this much high energy before you did this?
I've always been blessed or cursed with this thing. I don't know where.
Blessing.
My brother and sister aren't this way. I don't know why, but I've always loved being alive. And I could, so I don't know how to explain that part.
No, I get it. You have a lust for life.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, good.
Sometimes wow, you drive a Hyundai, check it out. I've always been that dude. It's not fake. But, I always had a lot of energy, but I think just staying the same and being in my 50s makes it seem like I have even more. But I do chill out. I want you to know.
All right,
I watch a lot of movies and chill out.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, Star Wars 4.
Okay.
But
4?
Yeah, New Hope, the original Star Wars.
Oh, the original?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because they're,
Man, you just recorded that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not a Star Wars nerd.
It's a Civil War.
I got dates in high school.
There's a Grand Army of the Republic. Star Wars is the first words in the first Star Wars is, it's a period of Civil War.
Yes, of course, but it's not the Civil War.
Correct.
So what do I care?
Sorry, that's
I'm
enough
not a fan
about
of
me.
Civil Wars, but
I'm running. Yeah, totally. I'm running out of time.
Yeah, we're running out of time. Here we go.
There is no time.
Lightning round. What are what are a few firsthand accounts from the battle for Little Round Top that you recommend?
Well, they're all a lot of the best ones are gathered in Attack and Defense of Little Round Top by Oliver Wilcox Norton, a masterpiece in both account and historiography. I got some thumbs up, even from Mike Lentz there. So, but let me say one if I can remember even half of it, because I think there's a lot of good ones. If you look at Pauley's Texas Brigade and look for the dedication of Hood's Texas Brigade monument in Houston in 1904 or something, Fonts uses it like crazy. There's great accounts of the fight for Little Round Top and whatnot. That's great stuff. But the one I like the most is when they're talking about the evening of July 2nd. I think this is John C. West, but it could be Vallisarius Giles, where he's saying that the officers were crossed with the men and the men were crossed with the officers. It was the same thing with the enemy on Little Round Top, that we could hear the officer cursing his men out by platoons and his men telling them to go to a place that wasn't that far from them at that time. He says that not a single man could remember a snap of the Lord's Prayer or even remember a word of it or even give a snap for it. Sorry, I messed it up. Then he says that white wing piece did not roost on Little Round Top. Both sides were whipped, and all were mad about it.
Oh,
yeah,
that's nice.
There's lots of good accounts.
I like that.
But that one sticks out to me. But read Attack and Defense of Little Round Top.
Okay, very good. Roy Mead, he says, "Hi guys, my question for Gary is: if Little Round Top was such an important position, why did Meade try to put more troops on it earlier on July 2nd than just part of Sickles' corps?"
Yeah, I mean, in short, Meade definitely did not place enough emphasis on his left. He was seemingly fixated on his right. He was concerned once he saw what Sickles did, and he obviously felt that, I don't know that he would have felt that Sickles would have just been on the north slope. I think that in extending the line, Sickles would have reached around to the south side of the hill and fortified it pretty well. So, and I don't think you need 4 brigades to hold Little Round Top. 1 or 2 did a pretty good job against a somewhat ferocious Confederate attack. So, I think that, Meade wasn't considering his left and felt it dealt with, and that the 5th Corps would soon enough be sent over there anyway. I don't know if he said that, but it was clearly already on his mind, by the time he knew Sickles moved forward.
Okay. Charles Fuller says, bringing out the big guns for your return with Gary, I see. Nice. Accounts of Warren playing a key role in identifying the need to occupy Little Round Top are well documented. However, there seems to be very little said about what Warren the engineer did during the rest of the battle. Do we know when he arrived at Gettysburg? Was he attached to a specific corps? Was he notably involved in any other parts of the battle?
Yeah, no. He performed a valiant service. He was great. And basically what he did was he arrived. He's riding the lines on July 2nd. Sometimes he's with Hunt, sometimes he's with other people. And he performs his great service twice, getting troops up to the hill, waits for that to finish. He's losing blood from the neck graze at that point. He's there at Meade's Council of War, but you don't see a whole lot of other accounts about anything that he's doing on the early evening of July 2nd before the War Council. And he doesn't appear much on July 3rd. So it's possible I don't know it, but he didn't do much else.
Okay. And Mike, 6 questions length. I'm just going to do one. We're running low on time here. In the Avalon Hill board game Devil's Den, playing as the Confederates, once I captured Devil's Den, I continued. Once I captured Devil's Den, I continued the attack on Little Round Top with those forces. Board games and real life are often two wildly different things. So, how feasible was it for Benning's Georgians to attack Little Round Top? What factors could have prevented them from continuing the attack?
Well, I could go on forever, but let me just say this.
But don't.
There's no time.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's just say this in a nerdy voice then. Ask Colonel Harris of the 2nd Georgia, because he tried. The Confederates have already lost 6 of their 10 regimental commanders. Benning's brigade has lost more than 30% of their soldiers. Devil's Den was an extraordinarily bloodier fight than Little Round Top, 50% bloodier. They'd lost a couple of colonels, the 20th Georgia colonel's down, and Harris goes and tries to lead his men, or is this Shepard, across Plum Run, and few, if any, of his men went with him, and he was shot in the heart and killed. I think that's Shepard. That's not Shepard. Maybe it is Harris of the 2nd.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. So, they are done. There is no concerted effort by Benning to do anything in going across the field. And I play Avalon Hill a lot, too, and I don't think it would go well.
Okay. Brian Darenick says, can you rank the importance of the roles others played, including when it comes to the success of the Union defenses on Little Round Top?
I can only do them chronologically. It has to start with Warren. Then I would go with Vincent. Then I would go with O'Rourke and Chamberlain, and then the other, leaders that are up there. And I guess I would include Augustus P. Martin and Hazlitt in there. But, give me Warren and Vincent as the heroes of Little Round Top.
Yeah.
Nothing against Chamberlain, but they made it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Cliff McCurley wants to know if there are any good first-person accounts written by guys on Little Round Top that witnessed the events of July 3rd, like Pickett's charge, from that vantage point up there.
Yeah, Benjamin Rittenhouse, who saw it well, has a good one in his... I can't remember what it says. Little Round Top in the title. I can't remember the exact name of it. So there's some good ones in there. I would check the post-war writings of especially the 155th PA, the 146th New York. I remember some of those guys writing about it. So I think there's good opportunities out there to find it if you look.
All right, Carrie Stowe. I think Little Round Top seems to be the most visited place for visitors. What is a little known or important place of Little Round Top that you recommend for a somewhat new visitor and or frequent visitor? Places often missed, etc. cetera, et cetera?
I would just say understand the north side of the hill. You've got Gibbs Battery, the 155th PA. You've got the 12th Corps monuments. You've got the 121st New York. You've got the 5th Maine monument that used to be on a rock, and now it's on the other side of the Wheatfield Road. You've got the 98th PA, Martin's Brigade plaque that has been swiveled off of its base. So this is a little nerdy for the new visitor, but to understand Little Round Top, you have to understand it in its totality, not just the south and west faces.
Joe Jacobs says, thanks, Mr. Anchorman, for all the good work you do with the trust. No, he said it right, Adelman. I donate whenever I can. I enjoy watching all the YouTube videos from the Trust and the videos you and Tim Smith do on PCN. I also enjoy taking tours in your Little Round Top and Devil's Den book. My question is, how did Hazlitt get his battery up the slope of Little Round Top?
All right, good. So there's lots of good accounts, and you could. I wrote an article for Gettysburg Magazine in 2000, Hazlitt's Battery at Gettysburg. So I guess I can call it Hazlitt if I want. And, you know, who do you want to believe? How much help did they get? Who helped them? Did the guns tip over on the way? Did they get all the way on horseback or not all the way? Here's what we know. 6 guns got up there, not 4. 6 guns got up there, at least for a time. 2 had to be especially manhandled. I always figured that's the right section up near, you know, at the very crest of the hill, because there's a shelf there. We know that the men of the 155th Pennsylvania lent a hand. We know that the cannoneers were trying to do it. We know their stuff was left behind the hill. So beyond the initial possibility of a wagon road for a little bit of it, I mean, most of it was done by hand, wheel by wheel, manhandling them into position. And then there's no agreement among the accounts on exactly how they did it.
All right. And then Kate Von D says, how do you think the interpretation of Little Round Top would have been affected by the construction of the proposed Pennsylvania Reserves Memorial Hall?
This is the 150-foot, I think, long steel and glass structure on the north slope. I don't know how high up it was. I always picture it that they wouldn't have put it right down in the valley, that they'd have put it a little higher so it would look better. And of course, I mean, you know, you build a road and things get really messed up. I mean, if you'd have built a platform for something like that, substantially. Now, of course, it would have brought important attention to the north slope of the hill that it never gets, but man, am I glad that this wasn't built. But
me too.
It was going to be a research facility too. Imagine conducting research in files right on Little Round Top.
That would be cool, but I think it would just totally change everything.
It would be cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no time, and we got to get going. Garry Adelman, thank you very much for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sending in your questions. Garry, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Thanks so much for having me, everybody. Great to be on Addressing Gettysburg.
Great to have you. I'm glad you finally did. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. Thank you very much for listening, and don't forget to spay and neuter your pets. We'll see you next time.
I have told you there is no time for that.
All right. We are done.
Blast, dudes. I see why some of yours go 2 hours. We could easily easy.
Are you a reenactor or living historian? Or maybe you're a War of Rights player and want to bring esprit de corps to your team. Well, then you need the Badge Maker, the leading provider of Civil War and other historical badges and insignias. Mention this ad with an attached message in your order and receive a free surprise gift. I myself bought a metal 2nd Corps badge, and it always starts a conversation when I wear it. So hit up the Badge Maker at CivilWarCorpsBadges.com. Something for everyone and anyone.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Garry Owen in glory. Instead of sparkle, drink down ale, and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man forget shall go to jail from Garry Owen in glory. Instead of sparkle, drink down ale, and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man forget shall go to jail from Garry Owen.